the suffering of Mr. Goldberg and his family, the wheels have moved very fast. And because of Catherine Rose Dunn and her family, who are famous and rich and very powerful, and who also want their suffering to end. Who can blame them for that? I certainly don't. But not at the expense of the life of an innocent man. This man, Gary Murphy, does not deserve to suffer as they have suffered. Nathan now walked over to where Gary sat. Blond, athletic-looking Gary Murphy, who looked like a grown-up Boy Scout. This man is as good a man as you will find anywhere in this courtroom. I'll prove it to you, too. Gary Murphy is a good man. Remember that. There's another fact for you. It is one of two facts, just two, that I want you to remember. The other fact is that Gary Sonigi is insane. Now, I must tell you, I am a little insane, too. Just a little. You've seen that already. Ms. Warner has drawn your attention to it. Well, Gary Sonigi is 100 times more insane than I am. Gary Sonigi is the most insane person I've ever met. And I've met Sonigi. You will, too. I promise you this. You will all meet Sonigi, and once you have, you will not be able to convict Gary Murphy. You will end up liking Gary Murphy and rooting for him in his personal battle with Sonigi. Gary Murphy cannot be convicted of murders and a kidnapping that were committed by Gary Sonigi. Anthony Nathan now proceeded to call character witness after character witness. Surprisingly, they included staff members at Washington Day, as well as some students. They included neighbors of the Murphys from Delaware. Nathan was always gentle with the witnesses, always articulate. They seemed to like Nathan and to trust him. Would you please state your name for everyone? Dr. Nancy Temkin. And your occupation, please? I teach art at Washington Day School. You knew Gary Sonigi at the day school? Yes, I did. Was Mr. Sonigi a good teacher during his time at Washington Day School? Did you ever observe anything that would make you think he wasn't a good teacher? No, I did not. He was a very good teacher. Why would you say that, Dr. Temkin? Because he had a passion both for his subject matter and for communicating it to the students. He was a favorite teacher at school. His nickname was Chips, as in Mr. Chips. You've heard some medical experts say that he is insane, a severe split personality. How does that strike you? Frankly, it is the only way I can comprehend what happened. Dr. Temkin, I know this is a hard question under the circumstances, but was the defendant a friend of yours? Yes. He was a friend of mine. Is he still a friend of yours? I want to see Gary get the help he needs. And so do I, said Nathan. So do I. Anthony Nathan fired his first real salvo late on Friday of the trial's second week. It was as dramatic as it was unexpected. It started with a side bench conference Nathan and Mary Warner had with Judge Kaplan. During the conference, Mary Warner raised her voice for one of the few times during the trial. Your Honor, I object. I must object to this stunt. This is a stunt. The courtroom was already buzzing. The press in front row seats was alert. Judge Kaplan had apparently ruled in favor of the defense. Mary Warner returned to her seat, but she had lost some of her composure. Why weren't we informed of this beforehand? She called out. Why wasn't this revealed in pre-trial? Nathan held up his hands and actually quieted the room. He gave everyone the news. I call Dr. Alex Cross as a defense witness. I am calling him as a hostile and uncooperative witness, but a witness for the defense nonetheless. I was the stunt. And viciously around his throat. Element of surprise in that. He forced the metal of the cuffs straight back into the prison guard's Adam's apple. What can I tell you, Bobby? I am a psychopathic liar after all. Fishenauer began to thrash and struggle fiercely. He couldn't breathe. It was as if he were drowning. His knees cracked up hard under the dashboard and the steering wheel. The night was filled with the loud, animalistic growls coming from both men. Fishenauer managed to get his legs all the way over to the passenger side of the front seat. His work boot kicked the ceiling of the Bronco. His torso was twisted sideways as if it were hinged. He gasped and made the strangest noise. It sounded like metal burning, crackling on a stove. Fishenauer's struggling eased off and finally stopped, except for some twitching of his limbs. Gary was free, just as he had known from the very beginning he would be. Gary Soniji Murphy was on the loose again. Chapter 79. Jesse Flanagan walked down the hall to room 427 inside the Marbury Hotel in Georgetown. She was feeling compulsive again. Driven. She wasn't happy about this secretive meeting and wondered what it was about. Jesse thought that she knew and hoped she was wrong. She wasn't wrong too often. Jesse rapped her knuckles against the door. She peered around behind her. It wasn't paranoia on her part. She knew half the people in Washington were busy watching the other half. "It's open. Come on in," she heard from inside. Jesse opened the door and saw him lounging on the couch. He'd gotten a suite, which was a bad sign. He wanted to burn money. "Sweets for the sweet." Mike Devine smiled from the couch. He was watching the Redskins on TV, cool as could be. In a lot of ways, it reminded Jesse of her father. Maybe that was why she'd gotten involved with him. The perversity of it had been a turn-on. "Michael? This is very dangerous right now." Jesse stepped into the hotel room and shut the door. Bolted it. She made her voice seem concerned, rather than angry at him. Sweet, nice Jesse. "Dangerous or not, we have to talk. You know your boyfriend came to see me recently. He was parked outside my building this morning." "He's not my boyfriend. I've been pumping him for information that we've needed." Mike Devine smiled. "You pump him, he pumps you. Is everybody happy?" "I'm not." Jesse sat down next to Devine on the couch. He was definitely sexy, and he knew it. He had Paul Newman's looks, minus the unbearably beautiful blue eyes. He also liked women, and it showed. "I shouldn't be here, Michael. We shouldn't be together now." Jesse rubbed her head against his shoulder. She gently kissed his cheek, his nose. She felt like doing anything but cuddling up with him now. But she could do it if she had to. She could do whatever it took. "Yeah, you should be here, Jesse. What good is all this money if we can't spend it, and we can't be together?" "I seem to remember a few days down at the lake recently. Did I imagine that?" "To hell with stolen moments. Come to Florida with me." Jesse kissed his throat. He was clean-shaven, and he always smelled nice. She unbuttoned his shirt and slid her hand in. Then she let her fingers graze the lump in his trousers. She was on automatic control now. Whatever it took. "We might have to get rid of Alex Cross. I'm serious," he said in a whisper. "You hear me, Jesse?" She knew he was testing her, trying to get a reaction. "It's a serious thing to say. Let me work on it a little. I'll find out what Alex knows. Be patient." "You're fucking him, Jesse. That's why you're patient." "No, I'm not." She was undoing his belt, being a little clumsy with her left hand. She needed to keep him in line for a while longer. "How do I know you haven't fallen for Alex Cross?" he persisted. "Because, Michael, I'm in love with you." She pushed closer to Devine and held him. He was easy to fool. They all were. All she had to do now was wait out the FBI and they were home free. Perfect. The crime of the century. Chapter 80. I was asleep when I got the call at 4 in the morning. A devastated Wallace Hart was on the line. He was calling from Falston, where he had a serious problem on his hands. An hour later, I was at the prison. I was one of 4 privileged insiders secreted in Wallace's cramped, overheated office. The press hadn't been told about the sensational escape yet. They had to be alerted soon. There was no getting around that. They'd have a field day with the news flash that Senigi Murphy was back on the loose. Wallace Hart was slumped over his paper-littered desk as if he'd been gut-shot. The others in the office were the prison warden and the prison's attorney. "What do you know about this missing guard?" I asked Wallace at the first opportunity. "His name's Fishenauer. 36 years old. He's been at the prison 11 years with a good service record," said Hart. "Until today, he did his job." "What's your best guess? Is this guard Gary's latest hostage?" I asked Wallace. "I don't think so. I think the son of a bitch bastard helped Senigi escape." That same morning, the FBI set up round-the-clock surveillance on Michael Devine and Charles Chakely. One theory was that Senigi Murphy might come after them. He knew that they had screwed up his master plan. The body of prison guard Robert Fishenauer was found in a dilapidated garage on the abandoned farm in Chrisfield, Maryland. A $20 bill was stuffed into his mouth. The bill was not part of the Florida ransom money. The usual rumors of Senigi Murphy's sightings went on throughout the day. Nothing came of them. Senigi Murphy was out there somewhere, laughing at us, probably howling in some dark cellar. He was back on the front page of every newspaper in the country, just the way Gary liked it, the #1 bad boy of all time. I drove to Jesse's apartment that night around 6. I didn't want to go over there. My stomach wasn't doing too well. My head was in even worse shape. I had to warn her that Senigi Murphy might have her on his list, especially if he'd connected Jesse with Devine and Chakely. I had to warn Jesse without telling her everything else I knew. As I climbed the familiar red brick porch stairs, I could hear rock music playing inside the house, making the walls tremble. It was Bonnie Raitt's Taking My Time album. Bonnie was wailing, "I Gave My Love a Candle." Jesse and I had played the Bonnie Raitt tape over and over at her lake cabin. Maybe she was thinking of me that night. I'd been doing a lot of thinking about Jesse the past few days. I rang the bell, and Jesse opened the screen door. She was wearing her usual attire, a wrinkled t-shirt, cut-offs, thongs. She smiled and looked glad to see me. So calm, cool, and collected. My stomach was knotted up tight. The rest of me was very cold. I knew what I had to do now. At least I thought I did. "And one more thing," I said, as if we'd just finished our last conversation a minute ago. Jesse laughed and opened the screen door. I didn't go inside. I stood my ground on the porch. Wind chimes sounded from the house next door. I watched for some false move, something that would show me she didn't have her act down perfectly. There was nothing. "How about a ride in the country?" "My treat," I said to Jesse. "Sounds good to me, Alex. I'll put on some long pants." A few minutes later, we were on the bike, blasting away from her place. I was still humming, "I Gave My Love a Candle." I was also thinking everything through one final time. Making my plan, checking it twice. Gonna find out who's naughty and nice. "We can talk and ride the bike at the same time." Jessie turned her head and shouted into the wind. I held onto her back and chest tighter. That made me feel a little worse than I'd been feeling. I shouted against the side of her hair. "I was worried about you with Senigi on the loose." That much was true. I didn't want to find Jessie murdered, with her breasts cut off. She turned her head. "Why is that? Why were you worried about me? My Smith & Wesson is at the house." Because you helped ruin his perfect crime spree, and maybe he knows that, I wanted to say to her. Because you